super nervous, so. Okay. So for me, prayer is a complete admittance that I am utterly dependent on Him. When we pray outside of an abortion clinic, we're letting all of those who go in know that they're not alone. 17 years ago, I had my first abortion, and less than a year later, I had my second. I felt very alone, and I've said numerous times since then that I didn't have anyone I could tell. I didn't have anyone that could help me. But a few nights ago, I was reflecting on this as I thought about what I would say to all of you tonight, and I realized I did have people that loved me. I did have people that could have helped, but my fear and my shame kept me from coming to them, from reaching out to them. Sorry. I couldn't risk, involving anyone who knew me. It was my burden to bear, and I felt that if I included them, they would have to carry it too. I also felt telling somebody would result in false help. They'd pat me on the back and fluff me up, and then I'd feel burdened to include them in the decision that I had to make. As a divorced single mom of 2 toddlers at the time, I already felt alone. I already knew how hard it was. And even though I had help, nobody could be there all the time and in all the ways that I needed them to be. So, with my boyfriend at the time, we went to the clinic. I remember the drive there in silence. I remember wondering if there would be any protesters there with horrible signs to heckle us. I remember sitting in the clinic in silence. I remember meeting with the counselor that I was required to meet with at the clinic, and I remember her telling me that I was doing the responsible thing. We went back to the hotel that night in silence. On day 2, we ended the life of our child. We rode home in silence. A few months later, he dropped out of school. I know now that he also felt alone. It affects both people. When we gather for 40 Days for Life, we acknowledge in our silent prayer that we are merely instruments of His love and His mercy. We can do nothing without Him. By being physically present, we leave open the possibility of being Christ's presence to another. 17 years ago, I couldn't tell anyone that I was pregnant, but I've often wondered what would have happened if I would have seen a complete stranger sitting outside that clinic. Would I have been angry? Would I have been curious? I don't know. But I do know this. I am, and I always have been, a very bold person. So whatever reaction it would have provoked in me, I would have had something to say. If you know me, you know that's true. I always have something to say. And who knows what would have come of that exchange. As it is, I'm standing here before all of you hoping that one day I get to be that stranger to another.
Thank you so much, Marsha. That was beautiful. As you can tell, it takes a lot of courage to be able to share something so personal and so impactful that has happened. So I just want to thank both of these amazing ladies again for sharing their story and just the message of how beautiful life is and how precious life is, but also how important it is for us to never miss an opportunity to share that message with others. And you were sharing that message just by your physical and spiritual presence here on the sidewalk. You know, when we go to do outreach at different churches, that's probably how most of you found out about the Coalition for Life, is you saw a booth at your church or you heard a pulpit announcement. And that's wonderful. Maybe you're here because a friend dragged you, like me, all those years ago when I got started. But regardless of why you're here, I really believe that God calls each and every one of us to be here and to make a difference. We can make a difference. And I would encourage you, actually, like us on Facebook, because we have a lot of great stories to share. We have a lot of miracle stories to share. We have a lot of prayer requests. And then there's also ways that we can help. Sometimes when women come to us or families come to us for help, we want to be able to give them tangible resources, and sometimes it takes multiple people working together to get them what they need. So we'll put stuff like that on our social media pages as well, because we always want to be available for them. But many of the volunteers that get involved with us themselves have suffered from an abortion. And so we want to always let you know that if that's you and you've never shared that with anyone, or maybe you have but you've not gone through any sort of healing program, we do have information in the back as well for women and for men, programs for women and men that are there to support them and help them on that healing journey. And I would never ever twist somebody's arm or encourage them that they needed to share their story in front of anybody, or that they needed to come to a clinic, because there's nothing that you can do to make up for it. That's not the idea. It's healing from it and moving on and taking what happened and now using that for good and to glorify God, whether that's publicly or privately or however. But I would encourage you, if you know somebody, please make sure you get a brochure in the back that says post-abortion on it. It says, is there an abortion in your past? That's always really important for us to be able to have and be prepared for as well, because if you have a family member or a church member that comes to you and says something like that, we as individuals need to be prepared to have an answer for them. So that's one way to do that. Something also that Katie said earlier that I wanted to kind of expand on too, and maybe encourage more, is that, you know, Students for Life of America is such an amazing organization, and their biggest slogan or tagline is abolishing abortion in our lifetime. And that's just it. It's not so much that we will abolish abortion in our lifetime, but we are abolishing abortion. We have 2 less facilities, right? 2 less facilities in our community, in one of the most pro-abortion cities in the state, guys. So God is bigger than any of this. God is bigger than what we're thinking. And, you know, even just 3 years ago, I would have never believed I would be standing in front of you. Not never, but I would have had a hard time believing that I was standing in front of you, in front of one of the last remaining abortion facilities, instead of having 4 facilities to still worry about going to and reaching out to women. So praise God for that. You know that this is a tough issue because it's so controversial. It's such a hot button issue in our society, and we cannot stand down. We cannot shy away from this. And part of that is spiritual warfare. And we have to recognize that spiritual warfare, okay? So prepare yourself before you go to the sidewalk. Set your alarm at night. Maybe set it for 10 o'clock at night or for whatever time you go to bed, to remind yourself, to prepare yourself for that time on the sidewalk, because you will likely get attacked. The enemy doesn't like what we're doing out here because it's effective. So make sure that you're preparing yourself, and maybe even asking a friend or a family member to pray for you and to pray for that time. And so when I was saying earlier, when we go to all these churches, sometimes the question that we get asked by individuals is, well, can't I just pray from home? Now, of course, praying from home is important. We need to be, and it starts in the home. We need to be praying with our families. We need to be praying at our churches. But I would say that we have to do something in addition to that. In the same way that doing mission work in villages, in poor villages in third world countries, I can't just say, oh, well, we should all just pray from home. No, you have to actually go there, and you have to work and do mission work and spread the gospel and go feed the hungry and clothe the naked and shelter the homeless. That takes physical effort, and that's what we're doing here. This is mission work in our own backyard, and that's important. So don't ever forget that. don't ever forget that this is local mission work that you are doing. And people will tell me a lot of times, I'll be standing right here and somebody will be walking by and they'll say, what are you doing? And I'll explain to them, well, I'm praying for the women that are going inside, and I'm offering them healthy alternatives to this place because I know a lot about what goes on in this place. I've been in places like this. I have friends who have worked in places like this. I have friends who have been harmed in places like this. And I, as a woman, feel that we deserve better. And they'll say to me, well, don't you think you could be actually doing something that is helpful, like, you know, going and helping all the kids in foster care, or maybe, you know, name any other type of work that you could be doing? And I say, you know, I agree with you. I think all those things are good. First of all, by me standing here, you're assuming automatically that I'm not doing anything, that this isn't helping. And second of all, you're assuming that this is all I do and that I don't do anything else. So strike two wrong assumptions right there. But it's amazing how many people think we're simply just wasting our times by being out here. It's amazing to me how people just don't see and just keep ignoring the facts when they are so much more blatantly in our face in this country. We had that, you know, baby part scandal just last summer, and there are still people that are denying it. Right, and we need to watch those. I guess when we watch those videos or we hear about them or we read about them, the idea or the feeling or the sense that we come away from those should never be demonizing the workers that are inside here, because it's the enemy that we're after, not the evildoers. Because we know, especially from personal testimony from former abortion workers, that sin can blind us. We're all capable of sin. We're all guilty of sin. We're all sinful people by nature. And we need God's mercy and forgiveness and his healing love. But we also have to stand against the injustice that's been doing, stand boldly against the injustice. And so, and yes, one of the videos showed an abortion doctor that was inside of this very facility right here that was haggling for prices. And that's just unbelievably sad and horrible, but all the more reason for us to be out here. Okay, so before we end tonight, I just want to say thank you again for being here. I have a couple of housekeeping things and probably a couple more points that will come to me before the night is over. Raise your hand if you watched any of the Super Bowl on Sunday. So a lot of people did. Okay, did you see the commercials? So one of our volunteers, Stephanie, actually was passing around Doritos. Probably some of y'all got that, but just as a kind of a thank you to Doritos in general, because the commercial that Doritos had was a very, it was prolific, maybe not intentionally, but showed a sonogram of a baby, probably in the later term, and the mother and the father in the doctor's office, and the father had Doritos, and all of a sudden the baby could sense the Doritos, and so the mom went into labor because the baby wanted to come out because the Doritos were so good. So kind of funny and really cute and whatever, and the abortion industry went nuts over that commercial. And this is what gets me. They said, how dare you humanize fetuses? And I saw one mom on one of my friends' posts that said, well, I sure hope I'm pregnant with a human, because if I'm not. So it's just one of those things that the more that the abortion industry comes out saying stuff like that, the more ridiculous they look to the general public. People are smart. They know better than that. There's still a lot of people that are going to go with that because they're blindly following them and they can do no wrong and all that stuff. And we need to pray for them and pray for conversion of hearts always. But I just think it's so funny how they made such a fuss about it because they quote-unquote humanized a fetus. The only non-real thing was a baby sensing a Dorito. Everything else was real. That the sonogram image is very accurate of what a baby looks like at that stage. And in fact, the creator of the commercial wrote that was based on the sonogram that he and his wife saw of his son, who was born last year. So it just amazes me. And fetus, by the way, is not a word to be afraid of at all. It's simply a Latin word meaning offspring or young one. And we all know that an offspring of a human being is another human being, just like all of us are offspring of our parents. So you just have to kind of laugh at things like that, but really at the same time understand how sad it is that that's how far some people in this society have come, and really pray for them. Always remember to have that compassionate heart and pray for them. But anyways, I thought I'd point that out. Are there any Doritos left for that, so that when we leave? Yeah, okay. Okay, there's a bag of Doritos, so before you leave in the back, you can grab your bag of Doritos before we go and celebrate the pro-life message that Doritos had. Which isn't always the case, but I guess in that case they did. So I can't find my notes, but that's okay. It was a commercial. It's basically very pro-life message that they showed.